Hi, everybody. Episode 15. American Imperialism and the run-up to World War I. This is slide, I don't know what it is. This is slide 57, and I think I'm trying to get to like 117 or something like that. Okay, Asia, and especially China, represented a potent emerging market for the world's industrial powers, us. And America's acquisition of the Philippines allowed for a stepping stone into Asia and a military presence in this part of the world. Excuse me. Filipinos expected freedom after the war but didn't get it, so they revolted against the United States in February of 1899. In the United States of America, most lore about this whole series of events says that we helped the Filipinos, but in real life, they wanted independence. They didn't want us to come in and take over their country, and we did, all the way until like 1946, and this is like 1899. We could not leave the Filipinos to themselves. They were unfit for self-rule. That is our social Darwinistic belief in that white people should civilize the world and run the world. That's our imperialists talking. McKinley's an imperialist, like Teddy. And so that's an imperialist view of that. Obviously, Mark Twain and William Jennings Bryan would be completely opposite of that and do not think that we should have taken over the Philippines. Okay, so this famous political cartoon that there was a meeting and we got the Philippines from Spain, who didn't possess Spain. They had colonized it a long time before that time, but they had no right to get paid for Spain because it was still the Philippines. So they shouldn't have gotten paid. This is independence leader Emilio Aguinaldo. We talked about that. Fidel Castro was going to be an independence leader. Sun Yat-sen was an independence leader for China back in like 1911 after the end of the dynasties. And there's independence leaders all over the world that want independence and the end of colonial rule. He's one of the people that leads the guerrilla movement against us because he believes we are trying to invade his country and not just extricate them from Spain. It's true. That is true. McKinley formed the Philippine Commission to improve relations with the Filipinos, and Taft was the one that was tapped to go improve those relations. He called them his little brown brothers. He liked the position that he held there. The Filipino rebellion lasted for almost 2 years and was crushed by U.S. troops by 1901. Aguinaldo was captured. Again, this Filipino rebellion, Spain's already gone. Spain's already gone. That's us deciding that we should take over the Philippines. Our fighting blood was up, and we all wanted to kill blank. This shooting human beings beats rabbit hunting all to pieces. We reveled in the killing of these people, and they always called them terrible, derogatory names. Our soldiers did. U.S. tried to assimilate the Philippines. They resisted and gained independence on July 4th, 1946. That's 46 years later, 47 years later. Damn the U.S. for its vile conduct on the Philippines. Anti-imperialist and Harvard philosopher and a writer, William James. He called it what it was, is that we had invaded them and taken over their country, which is accurate. Spheres of influence. So that happened a long time ago. China was a prize market in Asia, but was being carved into spheres of influence in the 1890s. So Germany, Britain, France, and then us, we all wanted to have a piece of China. China was very, very weak. I think I told you about in the 1840s, 1850s, were the Opium Wars and then the unequal treaties that we forced upon them. We were talking about in class because Hong Kong was taken away from China for 150 years, and now Hong Kong is trying to keep its independence, but China wants it back after that 150 years of that treaty. So we want a piece of this pie. We want a piece of that pie. There's a billion people there. Well, millions at that time. Hundreds of millions. Okay, so John Hay developed the open door policy, and basically it urged European nations to allow free competition over this Chinese market. Again, we are the strongest industrial power by 1896, and we also have participated in militarism. Again, we talked about it, militarism, alliances, imperialism/industrialization, and nationalism. So all of those things are going to factor into the whole world going to war. In 1914, we go to war in 1917 for World War I. The open door policy is because we want to have markets to sell our goods. This is an imperialist agenda. Everybody had trading houses. Everybody had different trading houses in China where you could trade your goods. So this policy was opposed by nations with established fears, but was embraced by those looking to exploit the Chinese market, like the United States of America. So we didn't have a space or a role there before, and then we demanded one with this open door policy. And we were strong enough to demand it. Other nations reluctantly agreed to the open door policy, but the U.S. had saved China for itself. We were making sure that we had our space to be able to sell our goods in China to those millions, hundreds of millions of people. The open door policy, that was against the will of other people, but we were strong enough to enforce it. So there's a famous Boxer Rebellion. Chinese were called Boxers because they did this thing that was like Tai Chi looking thing, but all of the Westerners, they thought that it looked like they were boxing. And so we referred to them as the Boxers. That's not what they did. They called themselves the Society of Righteous and Harmonious Fists. One of my favorite names ever in history. The Society of Righteous and Harmonious Fists. We refer to them as the Boxers because of how they exercised. Okay. The patriotic Chinese, referred to by the Westerners as Boxers, took over the capital of China because they were opposed to Westerners and Westernizations, and then they killed Christians. Bad idea. Bad idea. That made a lot of people angry, and that was it. It was over for the Boxers after that. All of these countries went in and went to war against China during this Boxer Rebellion as a result of them, especially when they killed Christians. Then it was game on. The rebellion was crushed by multinational forces. They made China pay $333 million in reparations, and the U.S. only got $18 million of that, but we got open ports to China. This is how they executed them. Their feet are just hanging there. Wow. The things that people have done to people in the world, holy crap. After that, China remained open to foreign trade and began to embrace Westernization, finally. Again, it's not until 1911 that China's dynasties end, and Sun Yat-sen tries to create a republic in China. If we had helped him, he might have succeeded, but we didn't, and so as a result, it becomes a communist country. So if 100 years ago we had tried to help Sun Yat-sen, maybe there would have never been a communist country, in China. But we didn't. Building the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal was an economic and military necessity for the imperialist ambitions of the U.S., and its acquisition and construction revealed the growing aggression of American foreign policy. We are going in and doing what we want, when we want, because we want to. Teddy Roosevelt is the most famous advocate of this, and Teddy Roosevelt is the one that made sure that we built this canal. Roosevelt was the strongest foreign policy president in a long time, and he was well-traveled, so he had been around, so he knew a lot about foreign policy as a result. Remember from 1848, the Mexican-American War was 1848 with President Polk. Then we had a civil war, 1861, 1865, and so we haven't had any foreign policy or foreign adventures for literally more than half of a century until 1898. Teddy Roosevelt is not president at that time. He is not president until 1901 when McKinley is assassinated. Teddy Roosevelt called on all the civilized and orderly powers to insist on the proper policing of the world, directing the affairs of backward peoples. White man's burden, social Darwinism, scientific racism. Those people that are the whitest are the smartest and the most capable of ruling. Those people that are the darkest are backwards peoples. Thus, we go into the Philippines, where people are dark. We go into all sorts of foreign nations. We go into Mexico. We go into other places that we consider people are less capable, and truly it's because they're less white, is what the truth of the matter is. Scientific racism. Social Darwinism. Teddy wants to build a canal so we can go from here in the Atlantic through the Gulf and then into the Pacific Ocean. That way we don't have to go all the way around South America like they had to do forever. So we build here in the isthmus, isthmus. It sounds like I'm lisping. I'm not lisping. It's an isthmus. I-S-T-H-M-U-S. I don't know how to say that. Isthmus. I don't even know how to say that word. Isthmus. The Panama Canal would allow Atlantic and Pacific U.S. naval fleets to support each other and to better protect their recent island gains. It's through here. Right through here. Here's the Gulf of Mexico. And right here is where we go through. Panama. We just carve a path straight through there. The U.S. had planned a canal across Nicaragua until a volcano erupted there, killing 30,000 people in Nicaragua. We were going to do it here. Okay, so French efforts to build a canal had stalled. A lot of it was because they had been destroyed by malaria, mosquitoes and malaria. And that's why they actually ended up drinking gin and tonics. That started in India because of this malaria and mosquitoes. And gin and tonics, the tonic part of it, made it so that mosquitoes didn't want to bite you. And as a result, you were saved from malaria, which traveled with mosquitoes. So French were destroyed by this malaria and other things. They also are the ones that had tried to build the canal to get to India in the Mediterranean Sea. And that would be, of course I can't remember it right now. They had hoped the U.S. would buy them out, and they did. So the French helped, the Suez Canal. The French had started the Suez Canal, and then Britain finished it, and then the French had started the Panama Canal, and then we finished it. Silly French. Almost 22,000 had died. By 1903, a revolt in Panama broke out. The U.S. Navy prevented Colombia from preventing Panama from having independence. We want Panama to have independence so that we can build a canal through their country. And indeed, as soon as Panama claimed independence, we stood up for them like hours later and said, oh, we support them. And that made Colombia not be able to do anything about it. Because we're too strong. And it started with a Chinese man and a donkey. And I don't know the story. And I have to learn the story, and I don't know the story. I'll learn it someday, apparently. Okay, so Panama gave the U.S. a 10-mile wide strip across Panama for $15 million. And we built a canal through that strip. Teddy didn't actively look to rob Colombia of Panama, but everybody thought that's exactly what he was doing, so he had a real big black eye politically. He looked like a bully. And we, indeed, are going to be called the bully of the North. Famous picture of him sitting in the machines that dig it up. 1904, construction starts. It was a very difficult thing to do, to build out of rock and everything. It faced landslides, sanitation, and deadly diseases. That's pretty cool. I would like to go. I would like to go across the Panama Canal someday. It opened in 1914. That is the same year that the World War I starts. So the Monroe Doctrine and the Roosevelt Corollary. You have to know this. You have to know this. You have to know this. Teddy Roosevelt held a more aggressive view of the Monroe Doctrine. He's an imperialist. He wants to have empires. He wants to claim lands in foreign countries. The Monroe Doctrine arguing that not only should the U.S. prevent further European incursions into Latin America, and that the U.S. could intervene anywhere in the Western Hemisphere to defend her political and economic interests. You know the Western Hemisphere: Canada, U.S., Mexico, Middle America, and Latin America. And that's what the Roosevelt Corollary says. We can intervene anywhere to protect our interests and political interests. Oh, look, we're here to help you. Guns pointed at them. We're here to help you. While demanding an open door in China, the U.S. had insisted with the Monroe Doctrine and military inventions on a closed door in Latin America. So we want an open door where we can trade in East Asia, but when it came to Latin America, we said to all the rest of the world, hey, get out, stay away, this is us, you have no business here. And we enforced it. The Monroe Doctrine continued to define U.S. relations in Latin America. We were now powerful enough to keep Europeans out of our hemisphere. You have to know, some of you remember from U.S. or world history, that Latin American countries gained independence during the Napoleonic Wars. And so from the 18 teens through the 1820s, almost all of Latin America had gotten free of colonization. Clearly Cuba did not, but most places gained their independence, and that's what was happening in 1911 in Mexico, is they were trying to gain their independence from Spain. Britain, who had the most powerful navy in the world, the Victorian era, Britain had like 20% of the land and 25% of the people, or vice versa, but they're the largest empire ever, the Victorian Empire, because of a big navy, because of a big navy, because of a big navy. And your cards, you know that Alfred Thayer Mahan is the one who says to the Americans and to the American administration and the presidents, we need to have a big navy. We'll never be a powerful empire until we have a large navy. Clearly, Mahan would be an imperialist as well. So you have to know in this time period, from the 1890s to the 1910s and into World War I, that we have people that are considered imperialists. Empire is the root word. They want to be able to have other places and colonize other places like Panama or Haiti or the Philippines. Clearly, we're going to get Guam, Puerto Rico. So that's what imperialists want. Anti-imperialists say that we should only take care of America and not become part of foreign intervention in other places. You have to know about imperialists and anti-imperialists. And you have to know who the most famous ones are that are imperialists. That's like Teddy. And one of the most famous anti-imperialists is Mark Twain and William Jennings Bryan, who you heard about with the populists to run for president as a Democrat. Okay, so Britain had the most powerful navy in the world, and at the time was warned to stay out of this hemisphere, but they denied the existence of this Monroe Doctrine. They're like, yeah, that doesn't pertain to us. We're the strongest nation on earth, and they were. But the U.S. and Britain almost fought, but the issue was settled with Britain getting much of the land. So we shared with them so we wouldn't go to war with them. However, the Monroe Doctrine was strengthened at first. Most of Latin America appreciated U.S. intervention on their behalf. Later, they grow resentful. Latin America grows resentful of how much that America has put themselves into Latin America and defending them, which, as far as they're concerned, it's abuse of them, not defending them. That's the Roosevelt Corollary. When Latin American countries had struggled to pay debts, the Germans and the British sent troops to enforce their payments. And so we say to them, so they have this stranglehold on Venezuela. They want their money. So Teddy feared these troops may end up staying in Latin America, a violation of the Monroe Doctrine. So Teddy issued the Roosevelt Corollary. The U.S. would take over and pay off Latin America's debts. Pay off Latin America's debts to keep Europe out of the Western Hemisphere. So we actually pay those debts to make sure other countries don't try to come into our hemisphere, which is breaking the Monroe Doctrine and also, therefore, the Roosevelt Corollary. The Roosevelt Corollary says stay out. The Monroe Doctrine may force the United States, however reluctantly, in flagrant cases of such wrongdoing or impotence, to the exercise of an international police power. That's what most of the world considered that we were doing here on this hemisphere, is being an international police power and an international police force against the will of Latin America itself. This is probably the most famous. Walk softly and carry a big stick. This is the Roosevelt Corollary, that if you have debts that need to be collected, we will take care of that. and we will fix that with you, that you, Europe, may not come over here. Essentially, the U.S. declared itself the policeman of the Western Hemisphere. Latin Americans saw this as overbearing and later referred to us as the bully of the North. Teddy was responsible for this bad neighbor policy in which the U.S. could intervene in Latin America unnecessarily whenever they want. We're going to see this terrible situation with Woodrow Wilson shortly after he takes office, shortly after he said that we would never get involved in foreign affairs. Okay, so Japan. Japan's late 19th century industrialization and aggressive imperialist ambitions in the Pacific escalated tensions with the U.S., who sought similar territorial expansion in this part of the world. All right, so you have to know in 1895, there was a Russo-Japanese war. Russo-Japanese equals, nope, that's 1904, 1905. The Sino-Japanese War is 1894, 1895, and Japan destroyed China because Japan had industrialized and China had not industrialized. So that was 1894, 95. Then 1904, 1905, Japan destroys Russia in a fight over Manchuria, like that. I have a great story about it. I hopefully will remember to tell you in class. Ask me about the Russo-Japanese War in class. So industrializing makes you a world power. Industrializing makes you a powerful nation. And Japan's imperial ambitions are to take over all of the Pacific. And then they do. They do exactly that, which is how we end up in World War II, and they're the Axis powers. I'm pointing at the back wall at Mussolini, General Tojo of Japan, and Hitler, of course, in World War II. So these imperialist ambitions continue all the way up until the end of the war, 1945. As you know, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that we drop atom bombs on Japan. They attacked and destroyed Russia. My favorite part is that they have come all the way around from Russia. They have to go all the way around the world. Russia has to go all the way around the world. And it takes 9 months for their ships to go. And Russia just sinks. Japan sinks like 33 out of 36 ships that have made their way 9 months all the way around the world in this Russo-Japanese War, and Japan destroys them. All of those poor Russian sailors are waiting like for all that time, 9 months, like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Only to end up in the bottom of the sea, because they just get slaughtered. They just get absolutely destroyed within, I think it was like days. And they easily lost. The Russians easily lost. It was called the Yellow Peril, because this Asian power had defeated white people. And so the whole world was like, this Yellow Peril, oh no, this is terrible, they've defeated white people. But Russia was not nearly as capable as Japan was. Japan had industrialized ever since like 1867. They had been industrializing for 35 years. Roosevelt participates in the peace treaty and gets a Nobel Peace Prize as a result. He's awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, as was Wilson, as was Carter, and was Barack Hussein Obama. The only 4 presidents to get the Nobel Peace Prize. The result of the treaty left both sides angry at the U.S., though as neither the Japanese nor the Russians were happy with the peace terms. The only person happy about it was Teddy. After this, many Japanese poured into California. You know, in World War II, we're going to have a situation with the Japanese in California, and we're going to send them away to internment camps, which is also horrible and terrible that we've done in our country. Peaceful Japanese citizens. After the 1906 San Francisco earthquake rocked the city, Japanese children were forced to attend special schools, citing a lack of space, a very racist policy. Needless to say, Japan was furious. So Teddy sends out the Great White Fleet. Teddy sent out the Great White Fleet to demonstrate growing U.S. military and naval powers. They visited Japan, easing tensions. It also greatly impressed and intimidated our foes. So we sent out this Great White Fleet. All of these ships around the world. We send these ships all around the world to show our power mostly. It's mostly about intimidation. supposedly friendly. We go all of these places. We send all of these ships, all of these places. It's known as the Great White Fleet. That was Teddy. An agreement happened between the U.S. and Japan that pledged to respect each other's possessions in the Pacific. This is going to come into play in World War II because we do not any longer respect their possessions in the Pacific, and we refuse to acknowledge that they are in possession of those particular islands. And we have the island hopping campaign in World War II where we're going to extricate Japan from those islands. Okay, Taft and Wilson in foreign affairs. So again, what this whole point about all of this is that in 1898 we have the Spanish-American War. The Spanish-American War gains us the Philippines, Guam, Puerto Rico, and then we puppet Cuba. We free them of Spanish rule, but then we puppet them. Then we have all these other places where we get involved in other countries. Right now I'm going to tell you very quickly about this situation in Mexico that very seriously looked like an invasion of Veracruz, that we absolutely invaded this city in Mexico because we could, because we're an industrial power, even though Wilson said that we shouldn't get involved in foreign affairs, foreign policy and military affairs in other countries. But here we go, right into Mexico. Wilson's foreign policies represent a return to more traditional American isolationism. That's the opposite of imperialism. Anti-imperialists want to be isolated, stay and care about our country. But his involvement in the Mexican Revolution brought the U.S. to the brink of war with our southern neighbor. This matters also in World War II because of the Zimmerman telegram that we will be talking about next class. Taft's foreign policy, before we get to that, Taft's foreign policy is called dollar diplomacy, and it encouraged Americans to invest abroad. So dollar diplomacy is all about us spending lots and lots and lots of money. And so instead of going and fighting and taking over like the Roosevelt Corollary, the dollar diplomacy says, no, just go spend lots and lots of money in these other countries. But the problem is that anything happens to our investment in those countries of railroads or factories or farms or plantations, then we send our military in to help. And that's why it creates a problem. This is dollar diplomacy, and Wilson's going to get rid of it when he becomes president. Dollar diplomacy encouraged Wall Street to use excess money to invest in countries that are strategically important to the United States of America, like the Philippines. Taft focused on expanding U.S. interests in Asia and even proposed buying the Manchurian Railway for China. Now remember, Manchuria, that was what we just talked about in 1904, 1905, that the war over Manchuria is why Russia and Japan go to war with each other. So Manchuria is very important to China as well. So Taft is trying to propose to buy it for them. Taft also gave money to Honduras and Haiti to improve their economies. It says, Uncle Sam, Bill, you look so much better in your own clothes. In other words, like you're trying to do diplomacy that Teddy had, and it's not good for you. Like that's not what we do. Because Teddy was the imperialist. Teddy was the one that wanted to get into battles or wars to gain other places. Wilson, however, was not an aggressive foreign policy hawk, unlike Teddy and Taft, so he ended Taft's dollar diplomacy. So for the rest of your lives, you have to know about hawk and dove. Most of the time, the right is pro-military, 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 even today, and so therefore are considered hawks because they want us to go in and take care of people over there so they can't come here and hurt us here. So that's what is a hawk, and therefore pro-military, pro-military. A dove is me, which is why I gave up my military history class. John Lennon and Yoko Ono, war is over, American flag with a peace sign on it. I would be called a dove. I do not want us to go to other places and start wars and have foreign military presence in other lands. And I don't want us to have a massive military budget. So a hawk, yes, strong military budget. Yes, go fight them over there so they can't come here. Doves, no, don't fight them there, and we don't need this massive military budget. That was then, and that is still now. The United States would never again seek one additional foot of territory by conquest. Instead, the U.S. would advance human rights, national integrity, and opportunity abroad, and then we go into Mexico. What are you doing, Woodrow Wilson? Now U.S. shippers had to pay canal tolls. Before that, Wilson got Congress to repeal Panama Canal Tolls Act of 1812, because even though we built the Panama Canal, he believes that we should have to still pay to use it because it's not our country. America First shipping bill. Those are people that opposed Wilson's idea. America First, we shouldn't have to pay tolls. 1906, the Jones Act granted full territorial status to the Philippines, and Wilson promised them independence. 1916, it's not till 1946. We didn't give them independence. We bought the Virgin Islands from Denmark, which was, again, a colonial possession that Denmark had taken a long time ago, and we bought it from them. But in theory, the Virgin Islands should be their own place. We are currently still have the U.S. Virgin Islands. They got really, really hit by the hurricane that swept into the Bahamas and that destroyed the Bahamas a year ago. Mexico had long been exploited by U.S. investors in oil, railroads, and mines because the people were very, very poor. So this is our adventure into Mexico and Veracruz at the end of the Mexican Revolution, and Wilson gets completely entangled in this. He didn't like it because the Mexican Revolution saw a full-blooded Indian become president of Mexico, Huerta. An Indian, not a white guy, a full-blooded native Indian. American, a Native American, but from there. But this revolution led to massive immigration of Mexicans to the U.S., and the rebels threatened Americans living in Mexico, but Wilson refused to intervene to protect them at that time. But a lot of Mexicans came into the U.S. during this Mexican Revolution. This is Huerta. When Wilson refused to recognize Huerta's regime, the revolution threatened U.S. business interests in Mexico. Remember, that's what Taft did, was put dollars, federal dollars, into and private dollars into other countries, and that American forces, American troops, would protect those business interests. And now we have business interests there. So Wilson refused to recognize his regime, and the revolution threatened that they would do something with the business interests that we have there from the United States. So the U.S. armed Huerta's rival, Pancho Villa. Pancho Villa. Some of you have heard the restaurant Pancho Villa. That's because it's a person. Pancho Villa is a person. He is going to go against Huerta for a minute against Huerta. 1914, a group of U.S. sailors were arrested in Tampico, Mexico. Wilson threatened to use force to free them. Many people believe that was just a ruse, that there wasn't really any big deal about these arrested soldiers, sailors. I think there were 9 of them, and they were released an hour later. So then we made them say they're going to do things, and the thing that Mexico wouldn't do is we said, well, you need to have a 21-gun salute in our honor because you did this to them. And Mexico's like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. So you know what's next. Wilson ordered the Navy to take Veracruz, drawing anger against President Huerta. So we send in the Navy because these 9 sailors were arrested in Veracruz, even though they were released an hour later. Huerta fell from power as a result and was replaced by Carranza, who hated Wilson's actions. Wilson thought Carranza would be happy when Huerta lost his power and Carranza took over. But Carranza remembers 1948 and President Polk and the Mexican-American War, which took more land than they possess currently. It took more land they had then compared to what they currently have. So nobody is okay with an invasion by the United States of America ever again after 1948. And the Mexican-American War took all of the Southwest from them. 1916, Pancho Villa, the bandit Mexican independence freedom fighter, murdered 16 Americans in Mexico and 19 more in New Mexico. So we had at first supported Pancho Villa when he was going against Huerta, but then after Carranza took over, now Pancho Villa is fighting for him against us. That happens a lot in our history, by the way, that we support people and then they later fight against us. Wilson ordered General John J. Blackjack Pershing to invade Mexico, but he never captured Pancho Villa. We don't catch him. We don't catch him. It's his home territory. Nobody's going to catch him there. And then we get into 1914 in the war. There's going to be a part of that. One of the 3 major reasons that we go to war in 1917 involves Mexico. And so that's why that's important, is that this antagonism that we have in Mexico is a situation. Okay, have a good day. Bye.